is so much preparation involved for job interviews. Studying the job description to make sure you showcase the right experience, looking up possible questions they might ask, and obsessively practicing through answers. And if you're anything like me, rifling through your closet, praying you have a blazer that still fits. Now, on top of all of that, most interviews are being done virtually, which unleashes a whole new layer of prep involved. That's why today I want to ease your apprehension and give you 5 tips that will help you ace your virtual interview. And make sure you watch until the end, because the last tip could quite literally save you from losing the job before your virtual interview is even over. All right, on to tip number 1. Prep for the worst case scenario. Get a second method of contact for your interviewer. One of the most panic-inducing things that could occur during your virtual interview is for your internet connection to cut out, and next thing you know, you're completely disconnected from the meeting. While this won't make or break your interview, you should still ask your interviewer for a second method of contact just in case this happens, so they're not sitting around waiting, wondering if you'll ever rejoin. On top of that, this actually demonstrates that you're proactive, which is a great characteristic to showcase to a potential employer. All right, on to the next tip, which is all about setting yourself up for success. Tip number 2 is do a practice run with a friend or family member. This is the time to recruit someone you trust to give you critical feedback. There are 4 things you should do during this practice run. Test your microphone quality. It will be very frustrating for both you and the interviewer if you can't hear each other properly. So make sure you test out different microphones and speakers. Try using both your built-in computer microphone and also some Bluetooth headsets or wired headphones, and test out different ones and see which one works the best, and maybe keep the runner-up as a backup in case something happens during the interview. Next, test out a few different backgrounds. The key to a good background is to find something simple and professional. A blank wall can work in a pinch, but ideally try and get a few things in the background so it doesn't look like you're in a prison cell. It's okay to subtly showcase some of your interests, like books, sports, games. Just don't go overboard. And keep in mind how your interviewer might perhaps negatively perceive what you have in view. Next, test out different lighting options. The best lighting usually comes from windows in front of you, and I also like to keep a thin curtain up just so that light comes in, but I won't be blinded by the sun just in case it comes into view. The mistake a lot of people make is they sit with windows behind them, but what this does is the light actually makes your face darker and harder to see. So just make sure you're sitting with a blank wall behind you and windows in front or to the sides. Next, check that the name that appears under your video is correct. This can be easily overlooked, so just make sure you don't have anything embarrassing or goofy as your name. It should match what was on your application. Keep in mind your interviewer might have multiple back-to-back interviews, so you want to make sure that what's on your screen with your video is actually your actual name that was on your application. And the last thing is to like this video and subscribe to my channel so I know you like this kind of content. All right, now that we've talked about the prep, let's talk about what to do the day of to ace your virtual interview. Tip number 3 is start prepping your space 1 hour before your interview. Since you did a practice run, you'll know where you want to do your interview, but just make sure you start setting up your space ahead of time to make sure you minimize background noises and distractions. On the screen, you'll see a pre-virtual interview checklist that I put together. You can take a screenshot of it, or I also put the text down in the description. First, print out anything you might want to reference, including a copy of your resume. Do not rely on using your computer to reference materials, but we'll talk more about that later. Get animals and children settled. Tell everyone in the house that they should be as quiet as possible for the duration of the interview. Close the door to the room you're in and lock it if possible. Get note-taking supplies and designate a space near you. Do not plan to take notes on your computer. I'll talk more about that in the last tip, but for now, just know you should plan to take notes on paper. Make sure everything you'll need is within reach in front of you. You don't want to be reaching around during the interview and get embarrassing close-ups of your cheek. Next, open up your webcam and check your appearance. How you look in the mirror can be wildly different from how you look in a webcam. So just make sure you actually open up your webcam and take a look and get rid of any bumps on your hair or anything so that you're not distracted by your appearance during the actual interview. And the last thing is to quit out of all your computer applications except for the one that you'll be using to actually join your virtual interview. You don't want to leave anything open that might tempt you for multitasking or cause a notification during the meeting. All right, now that we covered the pre-interview checklist, on to tip number 4. Join the meeting early, but not too early. With apps like Zoom, the meeting host might actually get a notification when you join the meeting. So you still want to join early, but you don't want to join like 20 minutes early where they get a notification and they get confused because maybe they think the interview was already supposed to start. Joining 10 minutes before will still give you enough time to double check your appearance on camera, quickly retest your audio, and still have a few minutes to calm your nerves before the interviewer joins. Once the interviewer joins, greet them and ask if they can hear you well. You could have tested your audio 100 times with 100 different people and still have issues the day of your interview. You're never going to really be able to predict this. So the best thing is just to double check with them. And, if you need to do a little bit of troubleshooting at the beginning, it's better than talking for a few minutes and realizing they didn't hear anything you said. You could also mention that you'll be taking notes off screen and even just hold up your notebook so that they know that, anytime you're maybe looking down, you're not like looking at your phone and you're actually taking notes. During my virtual interview, I actually took notes without looking, which worked pretty well. At the end, there was a little bit of deciphering left to do, but I think it kind of helped that I could keep that virtual eye contact throughout most of my interview. This interstitial time before the interview actually starts is also a good time to just have some small talk to kind of lighten the mood and calm your nerves a little bit. One thing I like to do is point out something in their background that's easily visible. Just keep in mind not to point out anything that might be creepy or kind of embarrassing for them. I find that paintings and plants tend to be pretty safe things to point out. All right, on to the fifth and last tip. And I think this is actually the most important tip of this entire list. While the other tips won't necessarily make or break your interview, this one certainly can. Do not attempt to Google anything during the interview. I know it's tempting to be able to look up things that they ask you that you don't know the answer to, or look up terms they throw around that you feel like you should know, but do not try to Google stuff during the interview, because if they realize this is what you're doing, you'll probably lose the job right on the spot. But you might be thinking, oh, well, I can be sneaky about it. Like, I'm pretty good at not letting them on. But from my personal experience, it is very, very easy to tell when someone is multitasking when on a video call. And here are some of the main tells. The light reflecting off of your face will actually change color and brightness. So when you're switching between apps, typically the video screen you're on might be a little darker, but when you go to a web browser, it's a lot brighter. And so a lot of times you can actually tell based on the color of light bouncing on someone's face. Also, a lot of times your microphone on your computer will actually pick up the sound of you typing. If you have built-in headphones, this might not be an issue, but if you're using your laptop mic, you'll actually probably be able to hear that person typing. And probably the most obvious one is that your eyes appear less focused, and a lot of times you can see that they're reading or their eyes are kind of going on different parts of the screen, because normally when you're talking to someone or listening, your eyes stay kind of fixed on them or on the camera. So it's pretty easy to tell based on someone's eye movement if they're not really paying attention. And if your interviewer catches you doing this, they'll probably take it as a sign that you didn't care enough about the interview to fully prep and rule you out immediately. And this is why earlier I said take notes on paper and do not take notes on your computer, because even if you tell them, oh, I'm going to be taking notes on my computer, it's just not a good look to be multitasking on your computer, because they don't know what you're doing and they might just assume, oh, you said you were going to take notes just so you could Google stuff during it. So I just recommend only thing you have open is the application you're using to take the interview. And if you need to take notes or you need anything to reference, keep it on paper in front of you. All right, time for the bonus tip. So one thing that I really, really recommend is when your interview starts, take your video and make it as small as possible and drag it to the top of the screen as close to your webcam as you can. This way, while you're talking, it's very natural for your eyes to drift to your screen and to watch yourself talk. But ideally, you're looking at the actual camera the whole time, because then it kind of makes the interviewer feel like you're making eye contact. So if you make your video small and put it as close to your webcam as possible, even if your eyes drift a little bit, they'll still be looking pretty much at your camera and still give this kind of illusion of eye contact. Plus, by making your video really, really tiny, you'll be less likely to get distracted by anything going on with your appearance. All right, those are my tips. I hope that they help. And if you have a virtual interview and you use any of these, please let me know which ones you like the most, or comment below with any other tips you think might help other people, because people watching this are looking for tips and probably kind of nervous about how their interview will go. So I'm sure any advice is welcome. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.